My name is Stephen Fagan. I'm curator of the Sixth Floor Museum, and we are right here in the middle of our special exhibit, 2 Days in Texas, which explores the last 2 days of President Kennedy's life as he made this whirlwind political tour from San Antonio to Houston to Fort Worth to Dallas, where the trip was cut short. They would have gone down to Austin later that afternoon had the president lived. This is a series of gallery talks that we're doing, living history programs with people who lived the experience of those 2 days in Texas. And you're in for a real treat today because one of my favorite people, one of the museum's longtime friends, is here to share her eyewitness account of being at Dallas Love Field that day and shaking hands with the president on November 22nd, 1963. Please join me in welcoming Jan Sittel to share her story. Jan will just rip the Band-Aid right off and show everybody what you looked like at the time of the assassination. I know putting your high school portrait up on the big screen is probably the stuff of nightmares, but you actually look quite beautiful there.
Well, thank you.
As you can see from this picture, you were a student, a junior at Thomas Jefferson High School in Dallas. Tell us where that was located, or where it is located. It still exists today.
Yeah, it was hit by the tornado several years ago, but it's rebuilt in the same place. And it was easy to get from TJ to the Love Field because you just go down to Marsh Lane from TJ, and it's about 20 minutes down Marsh Lane to get to Love Field. So it was an easy trip, an easy thing to do that day.
A lot of TJ students saw the president that day, either at Love Field or along the parade route. I think we have about a dozen or more students in our oral history collection who were involved in that day. Let's go back a little bit before November 22nd, and let's talk about President Kennedy for a moment. This is Kennedy the day before, November 21st, at Brooks Air Force Base in San Antonio. As a teenager, as a teenage girl at that time, tell us a little bit about what John F. Kennedy meant to you.
Well, he was such a change from the previous presidents from the beginning of the century. All of the previous presidents through World War I, World War II, and between were older, and they weren't that active. But JFK comes along, and he has a beautiful wife. He has young children. He is active. He goes out and sails on his sailboat, and it was interesting to see the change in lifestyle.
Would you say that Kennedy inspired young people, perhaps like yourself, to be more, if not politically active or socially active, then at least more politically aware?
Yes. You were more interested in what was going on in the government. Absolutely. And just when questions came up and the things that Kennedy did, like saving the world from a nuclear war with the Cuban Missile Crisis, and getting the idea of a man on the moon. Yeah. So
pretty optimistic times in the early 60s, and you were an eyewitness to the day that shifted that a little bit. Were you excited that Kennedy was coming to Dallas?
We were, and I don't remember exactly, but I'm sure that I went with 3 other friends from TJ, and I think our parents were for us to go and see him at the airport because it was just something that meant history and meant what was going on for everybody.
Yeah, it was a Friday, the 22nd, just like today is Friday, the 22nd. So the day we're talking about was 60 years and 4 months ago today. That would have been a school day, but in the Dallas school district, if you had a note from your parents, you could have an excused absence to go see the presidential visit.
Absolutely, and our parents had no problem with that, with giving us notes so that we could cut class and be gone that morning to the airport. And cutting class back then is something that you never did, but this was a special occasion.
And you got out there pretty early. Tell us about that.
We got out there at 8:30, and we met at TJ, and one of the mothers picked us up. And this was soon after 8 o'clock in the morning, and then we got to Love Field about 8:30. And as you face the terminal, which was smaller then than it is now, to the right side was a fenced-in area, a rather large fenced-in area that was next to the tarmac. So we got out, and there were maybe 10, 15 people already there, and then us, and we were able to go up to the fence and get places along the fence so we could see the president when he came in.
Which we can actually see in this picture here. I'm going to circle you. You're not looking into the camera. It looks like you're looking behind at the WFAA truck, the big camera that's up on top of the mobile unit there. But the fact that you arrived 3 hours early, 8:30,
Yeah.
and the Air Force One didn't land until a little after 11:30.
Right.
So that's why we see you pretty much right up against the fence
Right.
for that. And you can see you're holding a sign here, and we'll zoom in a little closer. There you are with your glasses, and you've got the sign waving in the air. And that sign is what is on display just around the corner in the Dallas section of our 2 Days in Texas exhibit. Tell us a little bit about how you acquired that sign, because you did not make it or come to the airport with it.
We didn't. We just went. And we were there, and while we were waiting, we got rained on, and that went away. And then more and more people were coming and coming. And this car drives up on the tarmac on the other side of the fence, and some people get out, and they have all these signs, and they start handing them out to people, and I was able to grab one. So and they were from Grassroots Democrats, and I had no earthly idea what a grassroots Democrat was, but the sign was great, so.
Yeah, those signs were made by volunteers from Southern Methodist University here in Dallas, and they made a bunch of these handwritten signs and brought them to the airport. And from the looks of them, and it looks like they were making those signs perhaps on the car ride to the airport. The penmanship is not the greatest, but it is amazing. I think I was telling you before the program, the fact that you kept that sign and kept it in immaculate condition. When you guys see it up close, it looks brand new, like you wrote it this morning, or somebody wrote it this morning. The fact that that still exists today is really remarkable, and it's the only handwritten sign from Dallas Love Field that is known to exist, and we're just so honored to have it in our collection. You donated something else to us, which we can kind of see in this picture. Tell us about that.
Well, that's my coonskin collar coat. And that was what was popular back then. I mean, Davy Crockett and the coonskin caps and everything. So we had coonskin on our coats. Yeah. And it was a great coat. I wore it through high school. I wore it through university. And then it just went, my mother put it in a closet and just kept it.
And now it's here with us.
And now it's
the raccoon collar coat, which we're so happy to have. And we didn't put it on display, but you can trust us. It's in good shape, and we're taking good care of it downstairs. So let's talk about the arrival of President and Mrs. Kennedy. Tell us a little bit about Air Force One arriving and what that moment was like for you.
That was when Air Force One arrived, there were, I guess, thousands of people in that fenced-in area. It was incredible. And everybody was cheering and yelling and just moving around. And us teenagers, as more and more adults came, were elbowing us. The adults were elbowing us out of our space at the fence. So we decided to say, hey, I mean, we were here. So we started elbowing our way back to a space on the fence. And when we had to do that, we had to separate more down the fence. So I stayed up at the front where I was, I'm glad. And so Air Force One landed, and it came down the tarmac and turned around, and sort of the tip of the wing just kind of went over us, and that was exciting. But the plane parked, and the door opened. They rolled the steps out to the door. The door opened, and the first one out was Jackie. And everybody that crowd was incredible. The cheering and the yelling, it was real Texans at a football game. It was incredible. And then the president came out, and it had stopped raining, the sun was shining, the sun hit his hair, and back then everything was black and white. Black and white TV, black and white photographs, black and white, whatever you saw was black and white. And the president's hair was always black in the pictures. But when he came out of the plane, it was a sandy color. And that was just, we just learning something new about him all the time. And came down and went over to where the welcoming committee had set up a little stand. And also, LBJ and Lady Bird walked up, and the ladies were given their roses. Lady Bird got yellow roses, Jackie got red roses. And then they were going to the limos had driven up also, and they were going to go over and get in the limos and start the motorcade. But, the whole time that they were talking to the welcoming committee, there was so much cheering coming from the crowd, it must have been hard to hear. It was just mind-blowing. And the presidential group going over to the limos, the president broke off and came back to the fence and started shaking hands. And the crowd just went crazy. All of these people behind us, all of us who were at the fence, we just bent double over the fence. It was incredible. It was just packed. And I remember thinking, please, fence, don't fall. This is going to be a bad situation if you fall. But the surge lit up, and we could pull ourselves back up. And the president was coming down the fence, shaking hands. And I could see him. He was smiling. He was happy. He was enjoying what he was doing. It was just momentous. He was so glad. And he came down. Gosh, I still get emotional about this. He came down, and as he got closer to where I was, all these hands and arms start going past my head for him to shake. And so he's coming, and I get him right in front of me. I shake his hand. I'm tall, and I could look at him face to face, and a happy, smiling person. And he kept going down the fence. And as he did, I noticed there was a man that was the president was going to his left, and this man was right on the president's right side. He was just pushing in on him. And I looked at his face, and it was very grim. He had clenched teeth and just a grim look on his face. And he was looking down in front of the president. So I looked down, and this guy, who I obviously recognized had to be a Secret Service agent, had his arm in front of the president, at the president's waist, between the president and the fence. And he had a huge fist, And he was doing what he could to save the president in case someone at the fence tried to do something. So they went on down, the president's still shaking hands, and then Jackie came, and she was shaking hands, and all the hands were still there. And she was leaning into the crowd more and shaking hands. And the people were saying, welcome to Dallas, welcome to Texas, great to see you. And she was saying, thank you, thank you. And I looked back at the president, I could still see him. And because of the arm, he couldn't lean into the crowd. He could take the hands that were closest. And I don't remember the president saying anything. I think he was just so amazed by what he was seeing and feeling. And then after Jackie came LBJ, and then people started yelling, welcome home, good to see you. And he was saying, thank you, and reaching in and taking all the hands. And then after LBJ was Lady Bird, and she got the same thing, welcome home, and shaking all the hands. So the president and Jackie went down to where they were opposite their limo, and then they had to break off from the fence. But LBJ and Lady Bird went farther down because their limo was farther down. So they shook more hands along the fence than the president was able to.
What an extraordinary memory for you as a 16-year-old to get to experience that, shake the hands of both the president and the first lady, as well as the vice president.
Yeah.
And what a poignant memory that would become, because less than an hour later, the assassination took place right here.
And through the years, through the days, I've kept thinking about it. It's something that anytime I see JFK, you just live it.
Anytime you get an email from me also asking you to come and share your story with another group of people.
Yes, that helps also.
Tell us about, so this was a little after 11:30 that you got to shake the president's hand at the airport. 12:30 here in Dealey Plaza, shots are fired at the motorcade. Here's a picture in the immediate aftermath. That's the White House press bus passing through Dealey Plaza seconds after the assassination. If you turn around and look right behind you, you'll see the banner, that White House press banner that was on the side of that bus. The driver's side of the bus, you can see right there. It's an extraordinary thing. In fact, our speaker next month is going to be Joe Carter, who was a UPI reporter on board that bus who heard shots fired in Dealey Plaza. Jan, take us back to the moment when you weren't here in the plaza, but you certainly, like the rest of the world, found out about the assassination. Where were you?
Well, after the president and the vice president left, the mother came back who had brought us, came back and picked us up. And we were going to their house to have lunch and then go back to school. So we got in the car, and there was massive traffic coming out of left field. And we were just in the car talking. We didn't have the radio on or anything. And we left about 12:10, 12:15. We got to their house, it was after 11:30, 12:30. And we were getting out of the car, and my friend's mother, grandmother, came running out of the house and just yelled, "The president's been shot." And that was the first, we had just left this happy, smiling person, and he's shot. So we went in, and we just dived down in front of the TV, and we're watching. It was some local transmission, and then Walter Cronkite came on. And we just sat there and listened. And when we were coming back from the airport, one of my friends said that they shook Johnson's hand, but they didn't get to shake the president's hand. And they really wanted to shake a president's hand. And after local news said that Judge Sarah T. Hughes was reading Johnson into the presidency, a friend, one of the other friends said, "You did shake a president's hand." And that just blew us all. So
Certainly a defining moment for your
Yeah.
generation, unquestionably. Tell us a little bit about the rest of that weekend. You mentioned TV, and TV, I think, was a big part of your life over the next few days. What was going through your mind watching, Lee Harvey Oswald's arrested, Oswald shot on Sunday? What was all of that like to experience as it happened?
it was just amazing. I mean, we didn't go back to school. I mean, school closed, all businesses closed, Dallas closed. And so I was at home. My dad came home from his office, and we just started watching TV. And I don't remember my mom and dad talking too much. I mean, they were totally focused, and it was just something that was, you just couldn't see how it could happen and what was going to happen in the United States. It really, but
Let me share a picture from our collection. This is an extraordinary picture taken live as the funeral was happening on Monday. And you can, if you kind of squint a little bit, you can just make out on that very tiny black and white TV the flag-draped casket on the caisson during the Kennedy funeral. And I love this picture because we often think of the Kennedy funeral from the photographs taken that day, the close-up pictures of John Jr. saluting, or the president's casket going down Pennsylvania Avenue. But this is how millions of people actually experienced that day, in a room, often looking at a very tiny television set, in this case propped up on what looks like a little table or even a step ladder so more people could see it. This is how you experienced the funeral, and I know that was a very moving moment for you watching that. Tell us about that.
absolutely. And to see Oswald shot on TV, I mean, it wasn't a television show or something. I mean, it was actual. And that, I remember that really got my parents. And just watching Jackie and Caroline go up, and I remember Caroline putting her hand under the flag to touch the casket. And that was something you don't forget. And when I was overseas working, I was in Tokyo, and this was back in the 80s, and I was getting a taxi, and the taxi driver spoke English, and he said, "Where are you from?" And I said, "America." And he said, "Where are you from?" And I said, "Dallas." And he said, "Oh, the first international television transmission that we got over here was JFK's funeral." So he knew the connection of Dallas with the funeral. And that kind of was a little much.
It's been over 60 years now. What's it like for you to be at this site where it happened, and perhaps more significantly, to have something you saved, a piece of cardboard that you saved 60 years and 4 months ago, be on display in a museum? How does that make you feel?
I am so glad it's in a museum, and this is where it should be, where people can see it and learn the history. The history is, my degree's in history, so history is so important.
We're so happy to have it, and we're so happy to have you, our local treasure you're always so willing to come and share your story with school groups and audiences like this, so thank you very much.
History.
Rather than do a formal Q&A, Jan has very kindly agreed to stick around for a few minutes if you'd like to come up and meet her and maybe ask her any questions. Please join me in thanking Jan Sittel for being our storyteller today.